Today, we're diving into one of the most brilliant, most audacious, and frankly, weirdest spy operations in all of World War II. It's a story so wild, it sounds like something out of a James Bond novel. And you'll soon find out there's a very good reason for that. So let's set the scene. It's April 1943. We're not in some secret war room, we're out on the choppy seas off the coast of Spain. A local fisherman spots something in the water. It's the body of a British Royal Marine just floating there. And chained to his wrist, a briefcase. Looks like a tragic plane crash. But here's the thing. This was no ordinary soldier. And this was no accident. In fact, the man in the water was a ghost, a complete fiction, a secret agent who was already dead before his mission even started. So how on earth did a corpse manage to change the entire course of the war? Well, let's get into it. To really get why the Allies had to resort to a plan this out there, we need to rewind the clock a few months and look at the gigantic strategic headache they were facing. Okay, so by early 1943, things are finally starting to look a little brighter for the Allies. They'd managed to kick the Axis powers, that's Germany and Italy, completely out of North Africa. So they had momentum, right? They had a launching pad. The big flashing question was, where do we hit next? Where's the best spot to invade and get a foothold in Europe? And here was the problem. The answer was, well, it was painfully obvious. To literally everyone. Just look at a map. The island of Sicily was the perfect, most logical next step. And if the Allies knew it, you can bet the Germans knew it too. I mean, this quote from Churchill just says it all. Attacking Sicily would be like announcing your every move to the enemy. The Germans would be waiting, dug in, and ready. It would be a bloodbath. So the Allies had this impossible problem. They had to invade Sicily, but they couldn't let the Germans know they were invading Sicily. So how do you solve an impossible problem? Well, you come up with an impossible solution. A plan so bizarre, so audacious, that it just might work. So, meet the team. You've got Ewen Montagu, a brilliant lawyer, and Charles Cholmondeley, a kind of eccentric RAF officer. And then there's Ian Fleming. Yes, that Ian Fleming, the guy who would go on to create James Bond. Years before, Fleming had written this thing called the Trout Memo, which was basically just a list of wild ideas to trick the enemy. And idea number 28? Planting fake plans on a dead body. It was time to make that crazy idea a reality. The plan was grimly codenamed Operation Mincemeat. And the core idea was this: create a totally fake British officer, give his body a briefcase full of fake documents pointing to an Allied invasion of Greece and Sardinia, anywhere but Sicily. Then, just drop him in the ocean off the coast of Spain and hope he's found, and that the intel makes its way to the top. But first things first, they needed their spy. After a grim search, they found the body of Glyndwr Michael. He was a homeless man, no family to come looking for him. He died tragically after eating rat poison. His lonely, anonymous death was about to be given this incredible, top-secret purpose. So they took the body of Glyndwr Michael and transformed him into Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. And the level of detail they went into, it's just mind-blowing. They didn't just invent a name, they built him an entire life, and they stuffed it into his pockets. They wrote love letters from a fake fiancée named Pam, complete with a photo. They put in ticket stubs from a play, an angry letter from his bank about being overdrawn, everything to make Major Martin feel like a real, living, breathing person. You know, the story of Glyndwr Michael is it's deeply tragic. This quote from one of the intelligence officers really hits home, that brutal irony. Here's a man who was completely forgotten in life, and in death, he was about to become one of the war's most important and most unlikely heroes. Okay, so the backstory was perfect. The fake documents were ready. The silent agent was prepped. Now came the most dangerous part of all, the actual mission. I mean, everything was riding on this. If the Germans saw through the lie, it would be a massive red flag pointing straight back to Sicily. It would be a disaster. But if it worked, it could save tens of thousands of lives. The stakes just could not have been higher. So, on April 30th, the submarine HMS Seraph slides up to the coast of Huelva, Spain. They chose this spot very carefully because it was crawling with German spies. The crew read a psalm, and then they gently pushed Major Martin into the current, his briefcase still chained to his wrist. The body was found, just as planned, and the documents started moving up the chain of command. And this is where the story takes a turn that even the Allies couldn't have predicted. The intel landed on the desk of Colonel Alexis von Rohen, a top German intelligence officer who was secretly anti-Hitler. He took one look at the fake plans and told his superiors they were absolutely 100% legit. His own deception inside their deception was the final stamp of approval needed to send it all the way to the top. Not long after, British codebreakers picked up on German radio traffic, and the news was better than anyone could have possibly imagined. They sent this triumphant, now legendary telegram to Churchill. The Nazis hadn't just taken the bait, they'd swallowed the whole thing. And what was the result? Well, Hitler, now totally convinced the Allies were hitting Greece, ordered 90,000 of his elite troops, the entire 1st Panzer Division, to be moved out of France and sent all the way to Greece to defend against an invasion that was never going to happen. The effect was immediate. You can see it right here. Hitler moved entire divisions, veteran fighting forces, to Greece and Sardinia. He was stripping Sicily of its best defenders, leaving the real target wide open. The trap was sprung. The Germans had fallen for it completely. All that was left was for the Allies to walk through the open door and for history to remember the man who made it all possible. This timeline just shows you how perfectly everything clicked into place. The deception in late April leads directly to Hitler's order in mid-May, which in turn clears the path for the successful invasion in July. It was just a flawless chain reaction, all started by a few guys in a London basement. When 150,000 Allied soldiers finally stormed the beaches of Sicily, the resistance was so much lighter than they'd feared. The island fell in just 38 days. It was a massive victory that helped turn the tide of the war. And mincemeat is now considered one of the greatest deceptions in the history of warfare. And what about the man who never was? Well, Glyndwr Michael was buried with full military honors in Spain, under his fake name, William Martin. For decades, his real identity was a secret. But finally, in 1998, his real name was added to his gravestone, at last giving this quiet, unlikely hero the recognition he deserved. You know, Operation Mincemeat really proves that sometimes the biggest turning points in history aren't decided by massive armies, but by a few clever people with a truly wild idea. It just makes you wonder, what other strange, secret stories are still out there, hidden in the shadows of history?